I had heard so many good things about this episode of Doctor Who, the Demons of Punjab. And I will preface this review by saying that most of those things, I think, turned out to be absolutely true. Before I really dig into my thoughts on this episode, though, I want to go over what my schedule is going to be this week, because I'm sure you guys can tell my schedule is really screwed up right now. As any of you who follow my social media will know, I had a power outage last week that lasted an entire freaking day, which obviously set me back an entire freaking day, but then on the tail end of that, I caught the freaking flu, so I've been a bit under the weather from that over the last few days. It has not been fun, and I'm still not entirely recovered. I feel just wiped out. But I am going to do my best to catch up and get myself back on track by the end of this week. However, because of the holiday this week, I will not be posting a theory episode this Thursday. Even if I put off all the reviews that I have to get done this week, I still wouldn't have time to get that finished and get everything prepared for the holiday that I need to get prepared. I know it sucks since I missed a theory 2 weeks ago and my theory for last week was late, but it's the best I can do. But I do have a Teen Titans review coming out later today. The re-upload of my 2 cents on this season of Doctor Who so far, without the busy background that some people were having trouble with, will be up probably before this even goes up. And Friday is going to be a double Transformers review, and if I have a little bit of extra time, I will try to get something else out special for you guys at some point to make up for the lack of a theory. I'm really sorry, I'm bummed out about it too, but that's just the way things have to go. That said, let's talk about this episode of Doctor Who, The Demons of Punjab, in which an encounter with her grandmother sparks Yaz to want to go back in time and experience some of her grandmother's history for herself, to learn some things about the woman that she doesn't seem willing to share. The Doctor insists that it's a bad idea to interfere in the timelines of your family members, as even the tiniest mistake could lead to you not existing, and that tends to suck. But like me, the Doctor seems to have a soft spot for Yaz, and so gives in, which leads to the Doctor and her entourage ending up right in the middle of a rather dangerous real-life historical event, the partition of India. This was the division of British India into Hindu-controlled India and Muslim-controlled Pakistan, leading to the mass displacement of people on both sides as they were ushered to what was considered their new home country, and the deaths of up to 2 million people, depending on which estimates you're looking at. It's an event that I'd heard about in passing, but being American, I never really heard about it in detail, and I will say, one of the greatest things about this episode as a pseudo-historical episode of Doctor Who is it sparked my interest in this event and got me to go read about it. Not a lot, I've been really pressed for time, but I still found it interesting enough that I worked that into my schedule. I can't remember the last time that a Doctor Who episode has sparked that kind of interest in me. So, right away, bravo for that. As the group shows up, they discover that Yaz's grandmother, who was a great character, I really liked her in this episode, I just want to say that in case I forget to later, just as she's about to marry a man who Yaz has never heard of. He is Hindu, Yaz's grandmother is Muslim, and of course, with everything that's going on, that's going to be a problem for a lot of people, and that ends up being the main driving force of the episode. And at first, it seems like a strange group of aliens who, I can't remember what they're called. I should remember what they're called because I just looked it up, but I'm just going to roll with it. I don't remember what they're called. They're the titular demons, though, so I'm just going to call them demons. At first, it looks like these demons are interfering in this marriage. They kill the holy man who was supposed to officiate it, or at least they seem to, but that's where the main twist of the episode comes in. It turns out that this species, who the Doctor recognizes as being incredibly dangerous warlike aliens, has looked at the damage that their old lifestyle did to their society and made a change for the better, instead becoming a race that goes around and remembers those who die in unfortunate circumstances as they die. That means that someone else killed the holy man. It turns out to be someone who you wouldn't immediately expect, which is another neat twist that this episode, I think, pulls off a whole lot better than the alien one. Like, the human side of this episode, the side of this episode that dealt with Yaz's grandmother and all of the people in her life, I feel was just so much better than the alien aspect of this episode. The alien aspect of this episode felt entirely removed from the human element. Like, these were things that were happening alongside each other, and there was some crossover for sure, but they almost felt like entirely separate stories to me, and the human element was definitely significantly better. There were so many great interactions between Yaz and her grandmother, and I thought the interactions between all of the historical characters were just great. That alone could have been the entire episode and I would have been satisfied with it. Like, I feel that that aspect of the episode was so strong that I just want you guys to take my word for it that it's that strong and go watch it if you haven't yet. And honestly, I wish that they had expanded that aspect of the episode, the human aspect of the episode, enough that they didn't even need the alien stuff in here at all, because I didn't like it. The aliens, the Thijarians, I think they were called. I think that's right, at least. They were just wholly uninteresting to me. Like, yeah, their mere presence here got a big reaction out of the Doctor, and I really do think that, tying this back into some complaints that I've made about this season so far, that she would have used violent measures to protect herself, her friends, and the other humans around her from these people if it had come down to that. And they were smart enough to outmaneuver the Doctor on a couple of occasions, which did make them more interesting than they seemed at first. But they weren't interesting beyond that. Like, what was that twist? That they remember people at the moment that they die? What is this, like the third race of aliens in the Doctor Who universe that does that now, and like the second time in recent memory where there was a twist where they seemed like they were going to be the villain of the episode and then it turned out they weren't? Like, seriously, we just did this in the Christmas crossover where Peter Capaldi's Doctor met up with the first Doctor. This just happened, and those guys were way cooler than these guys. I thought they were a weak, not villain, but antagonist. They were still an antagonistic force for part of this episode. I thought they were a weak antagonist. I didn't think they were particularly interesting once they weren't antagonists anymore, and I thought the twist related to them was really weak. And while it did seem like the Doctor would have used violent measures to deal with them and protect her friends if it had come down to that, the script was still written so that she didn't have to. This is just another example of what I've been talking about, where the writers this season seem so hell-bent on the Doctor being a pacifistic character that they will write stories specifically to avoid her having to use violence. But I want to stress that everything else about this episode was fantastic. I am really starting to love Yaz as a character, so getting to watch her catharsis as she discovered things about her grandmother that she never could have learned otherwise, that she never would have known otherwise. This is someone she cares about an immense amount. It felt good to me. I enjoyed it a lot. The final twist of the episode, the twist that existed within the human element of the story, was genuinely heartbreaking. And I do like that this new era of the show has stuck to its principles enough that even though the Doctor could have changed things so that things didn't end as tragically as they ended up ending, she didn't. And I liked that her companions were intelligent enough people and trusted her enough to understand why she couldn't. But I still like that she found ways to help out where she could. Like, with the holy man who was supposed to officiate for these two dead, she stepped in and officiated for them, even knowing the outcome of things. Like, obviously there's a reason that Yaz doesn't know about this man that her grandmother married before her grandfather. The Doctor still helped them because she recognized that it was worth it for them to be happy for as long as possible. So while I do have some complaints about one aspect of this episode, one factor within this episode, the rest of it, I agree with what everybody's saying, that this is the best episode of the season yet. I really did like it, and it addressed something that I presented as an issue that I've been having with this season so far in that 2 cents video that I mentioned. Finally, we got a story with real personal stakes for one of these companions, and I really do hope that the writers keep that in mind and that Yaz grows as a character because of this, because I can't imagine how she couldn't. I actually have a theory about where the show is going in regards to these companions. I kind of feel like they're building up Yaz to be the Doctor's one true companion, that at the end of this season we're going to end up with just the Doctor and Yaz traveling together, and Graham and Ryan are going to go home having grieved over the loss of Grace and ready to move on with their lives. And if that ends up being the case, I'd honestly be pretty excited, because I want more interactions, more direct interactions between the Doctor and Yaz. The chemistry that these two characters have is just fantastic. Like, the writing's subtle about it, the episodes don't draw a ton of overt attention to it, but I feel a similar kind of chemistry between these two as the kind of chemistry that we got between the Doctor and Rose, for example. If you guys haven't seen this episode, I definitely recommend that you give it a watch. Though I will say that one thing that I didn't bring up in that My 2 Cents video that I probably should have is that so far we haven't gotten really any fun episodes of the show yet this season, and I do feel like this season is lacking something because of that, so maybe the next one will change that, because this one, despite the fact that there were fun things about it, wasn't a very fun episode of the show. Like, say what you want about the Moffat era, but the show had more of a sense of humor then, and I am starting to miss that, and this episode being as tragic as it was, it compounded that just a little bit. That said, though, guys, as per usual, I'd like to know, what did you think of The Demons of Punjab if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.